I'm Sarah Ashford, and today I'm going to be talking about English paper piecing. I'm going to be showing you the difference between thread basting and glue basting so that you can choose what your preference is going to be. And we're going to be making a small rosette that we're going to put onto a centre to make into a block, a bit like this one. So let's get started. So before we start making our block, I wanted to show you some examples of English paper piecing that I've done in the past. Now this is similar to what we're going to be doing. This is using hexagons, which is a six-sided shape, and this is made into a little rosette, and it's known as a grandmother's flower garden. If you look it up on the internet, you'll see some wonderful grandmother's flower garden quilts, and they were very popular at one time to make those, but I just wanted to show you some different ones that I've got. So these are using Liberty prints, which they're really pretty, and then I've got some Christmas ones that I made. And the nice thing about English paper piecing is you can do what's called fussy cutting. So fussy cutting is where you select a motif, or it might be a flower, or it might be a character. We've got Father Christmas here, and you purposely cut it out in a way that shows it off. And I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So I've got some Christmas ones here. And then over here I made, so this one is another little rosette, but this time it's using diamonds. Now diamonds are a little bit trickier because you've got the points and you've got the tails of the points, and that is going to be needed to be tucked in at some point, but we're sticking with hexagons today. And then on this one I put a little Suffolk puff, or it's also known as a yo-yo, in the middle, so that's quite fun. Here's another one with the diamonds. I've got more fussy cutting here. And then you don't have to use hexagons. You can use other shapes, and they don't have to be small. So these ones here, these are 1-inch hexagons, but this one's a slightly bigger one. So I think that's 1.5. And again, I fussy cut it there. And here's another one of my favourites. I've got the little cat face looking at the tin of tuna in the middle, which I rather like. And then, like I say, you don't have to just keep using hexagons. As long as the shapes tessellate together, you can do all kinds of things, and you can keep going with them and make a whole quilt if you want to with it. So I really love English paper piecing, and it's all done by hand. So it's really nice to do in front of the telly, that sort of thing, and take it with you as well. It's very portable, which I like. Now you do need templates, and I wanted to talk to you about templates. Now I like using these ones. Now these you can purchase really inexpensively. Sometimes they come free with magazines, and the nice thing about it is it shows you the middle, so if you want to do the fussy cutting then you can. So that style of template is really great. Another one that I've got that's really handy is this one. So it's literally a set of templates. It's by a company called So Easy, and there's a whole selection here of different sizes on a little keychain, so you can just take it apart and use whatever size you like. And with these ones, it's even got little holes, and it's marking that 1/4 inch seam allowance so that you can see what's going to be in your hexagon, and then you've got your seam allowance here. And that's the same with this one. It gives you that window to show you what you're fussy cutting, but you need your 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around the edge. So I really recommend both of these templates actually, and particularly this set, because then you've got lots of different sizes should you want to make larger ones. And these also come in different shapes as well. So the other thing you need a cutting mat, 'cause you're going to be cutting. Now I've got this lovely mat here, and it's actually a rotating cutting mat, so I can rotate it, which means that I'm not turning the fabric when I'm cutting it. I can rotate the mat, and that's really useful because I don't want things to move out of position. I'm going to have 6 sides of my hexagon to cut, and I can just rotate my mat. So you'll need a mat. The other thing you'll need is a rotary cutter. Now I really like the little one. This is the 28-inch blade, and it just gives you that little bit more control and precision when you're cutting your hexagon. So I definitely recommend a smaller rotary cutter for that. Now I'm going to be talking to you in a minute about the difference between hand basting and glue basting. So if you're going to be glue basting your hexagons, you're going to need a glue pen. Now this one is a sew line one, and you can buy refills for this. It's just literally glue, a little glue stick, and then you just glue it on. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. And you can buy the refills, like I say, because if you're doing a big quilt, you might want to use the glue, and it's surprising it does run out, so it's great to get the refills. And then the other thing you're going to need is thread. Now you're going to be using thread to baste your hexagons if you're thread basting, but you will be stitching your shapes together. And this is Orifil thread. It's an 80 weight. It's very, very fine, but it's also very, very strong. And this colour is called Dove, and it's one of my favourite colours because it's grey, it blends with everything. It's really, really lovely. So I do recommend the Orifil thread. And then English paper piecing, as the name suggests, uses papers. So you can buy pre-bought papers, or they come free with magazines. And this is what you're going to be basting your fabric around. Okay, so this is the hexagon here. And I really like these ones because they've got a little hole in the middle. There we go, if you can see it there. And what that means is you can then use something like a knitting needle to hook out your papers at the end when you're done, because that's the idea of English paper piecing. You're basting around the papers, but then ultimately the papers are taken out. So if you've got a little hole or a little heart like these ones, it just makes it a little bit easier at that later stage. So you can buy these really inexpensively. You can print them on the computer and cut them out if you want to. These are hexagons, but you can get different shapes as long as they tessellate, and different sizes. So this one's an octagon, a bigger one, but you can get all different shapes and sizes. So you're going to need the papers. And then of course you'll need some fabric. Okay, so first of all I'm going to show you how to cut out your hexagons and how to do that fussy cutting. So I've taken my motif here and I've just cut it out roughly from my fabric, which just makes it more easy to manage rather than dealing with a big large piece of fabric. And I'm going to take my hexagon and I'm just going to place it so that my motif is in the centre. And this is where the rotating mat comes in handy. So I'm just going to hold it down. And I'm just going to start cutting away. Oops, do that again. So that I am left with the hexagon. Cut here. Let's tear that excess away. Now I really love fussy cutting. The only downside is it does waste quite a lot of fabric. So some people are reluctant to do it because there is a lot of waste, because you are choosing those motifs from a print and then you end up with a fat quarter, for example, full of holes basically, so you can't really use it for anything else. But as you've seen, it does create some fabulous rosettes for EPP. Okay, so there we go. That is how we do the fussy cutting. And now I'm going to show you how to do glue basting. So I'm going to take my template and turn this over, and then I'm going to pop this in the centre. Here we go. I'm just going to take a little pin and I'm just going to pin that to the fabric. Make sure it's straight, like so. And I'm going to take my glue pin. I'm just going to put a little bit across here. Can you see it's turning blue? I'm just going to fold that down, and then I'm just going to rotate it. A little bit of glue, not too much, because remember we're going to be removing the papers. I'll probably take that pin out now, it's not going to go anywhere. Bit more glue. fold it down, just keep going all the way around. And the last bit like that. So there we have it. That is how you glue baste. This time I want to show you how to thread baste. So what I've done is I've got my needle and put the Aurifil thread onto it, and I've put a knot on the end, and I've pinned my paper to the hexagon in exactly the same way as if I were glue basting. And we're going to be working our way around the hexagon in the same way. So I'm just going to fold down the top, and then I'm going to put my needle through, and I'm just going to come up the other side like so and pull it tight. Then I'm going to rotate it and then fold the next side down, and then I'm going to go through here where I've folded down. And the thing with these stitches is they don't need to be perfect. These are just big basting stitches that we're going to be taking out at the end. The purpose of them is just to hold the fabric around the paper. So don't worry if they're not even, if they're not perfect. Don't need to worry about any of that. As long as your fabric is nice and tight round that paper, that is all you're aiming for. Now you can probably take the pin out at that point. It just, otherwise it might be in the way and then you won't prick yourself. And so I'm just going to keep going all the way around with my needle, and this becomes really quite mindful. I'm doing this now, I'm not really having to think about it, I'm just doing it almost automatically. I've done quite a few already, as you can see, and you just start getting into a rhythm of it, and I quite like that. It's quite a nice thing to do, and I think that's, for me, one thing that I like about the thread basting over the glue basting is I like stitching. I like a needle in my hand, and I can easily do this in front of the television or while having a chat with a friend, and it's quite soothing and relaxing. And the glue basting is fine, and it's ultimately it's a lot quicker, but it at the end of the day is gluing, not stitching. Okay, so I've come back to the beginning now. I just want to secure that in place, so I'm just going to go back down, hold down that fold, and then I'm just going to come up and make sure that it's secure. You can always put an extra one in to hold that thread in place if you want to. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and cut off my excess thread. There we go. So there is my finished thread basted hexagon. And what I like to do now is just give them all an iron. That just gives them a nice crisp finish. And then we're going to think about sewing them all together. So I've pressed all of my hexagons and I've put them into a rosette formation. So I've got my red one in the centre, and then I've got the petals, as it were, all the way around the edge. And what we're going to be doing is attaching each petal to our centre rosette. The centre of the rosette. So I'm just going to take my little centre and the top one, and I'm going to place them right sides together like this, and I've got my needle and thread with a knot in the end, and I'm just going to hold it in my hands like this, and I'm going to come up so that my knot is hidden. Now there's different ways of doing the stitching to hold the papers together. I like to do what's called a ladder stitch. So I've come up that first hexagon, the light pink one, my knot's underneath, and I'm going to go in now to the orange one, and I'm going to go along and come out. And then I'm going to go into the pink one and go along just a tiny bit, literally just a few millimeters, go along and come out. Then I'm going to go back into the orange one and then come out again. I want these small, I want these tight. So I'm pulling as I go, we want them quite tight. because these are the stitches now that are holding them together. So remember, we're not using a sewing machine, we're doing this all by hand. Now the other type of stitch you can use is a whip stitch. So a whip stitch is where you're going over and over and over, and that stitch is fine to use. Lots of people use that, but it's more visible on the front, and hopefully when I have finished doing this I'll be able to show you that this stitch, this slip stitch, is almost invisible to see from the front. So I'm just keeping going till I get to the end. And it does sometimes get caught, but just unhook it like that. And it's one of those things, it feels a bit awkward at first, that first hexagon that you do, and then the more you do them, the more you start doing it without even thinking about it. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end now, and it's where the points meet that you get that additional bit of strain. So what I'm going to do is just add a few extra stitches to make it a little bit tighter. Do another one. Oops. Like that. And then I'm going to open it out, and you'll see that they are invisible. Now what you can do is, your thread is now here, is you can take your next one and you can put that, let's get it the right way, that way, there we go. And then you can just keep on going. So I'm going to come into this red one first from the pink one, and then I'm going to do exactly the same along this edge. So I'm going to keep going, stitching this one on here, and then I'm going to stitch all the other ones on, and then I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so I've now attached all of my outer hexagons to my central hexagon, and I need to now just do exactly the same thing, stitching these hexagons together. Now the nice thing is you can fold it, so we want to sew here, so you can just fold your hexagon, and it folds nicely because you've got the paper in it. So you're just going to stitch across there, and then you'll have to finish off, and then you'll open it out, and then you'll come to the next one, and then you'll just fold across there, stitch across there, and you'll keep going until you've stitched your whole rosette together. So I'm going to go and do that now. So now I have joined all of my hexagons together to form my rosette. I'll just show you the back, so the papers are still in it. And what I need to do is remove those basting stitches that I put in place to start with. So I'm just going to take my scissors, and I'm just going to start taking them out. And it shouldn't take you too long. So I'm just going to take out the rest of my basting stitches, but then I can show you that now I can really easily pop out my papers. So I'll do that for all of them, and then we're going to make this into a 12.5-inch block. So I've got my background fabric here, and I need to find the center. So I'm just going to fold it in half again, and make a crease here, and then open it out, so that will give me my central point. And then I will just place my rosette in the middle, making sure it's lined up nicely. And I can do this in several ways. So I can use spray based to stick it on, and then I could either stitch around it with the sewing machine, or do a very small slip stitch like I did to join the hexagons together. Or you can use appliqué pins to hold it in place. Like I say, there's different ways you can either use the sewing machine. If you wanted to, you could even do like a blanket stitch, like a decorative stitch around the edge if you wanted to. Yes, so lots of different ways that you could finish off your block. And there you go.